Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I don't know at this point if any of you, the ones that were following this channel, remember me because it's been so many months. I was so excited to start this YouTube channel back in August, and I think since August I might have uploaded like 4 or 5 videos, and that was not my intention at all. So I'm so sorry for disappearing. At the end of the year, I experienced some health issues due to my pregnancy, and thankfully I'm all recovered. I'm all good now. My energy is back, and I'm just so excited to start the year making new videos and reading and sharing all about the books I read with you. So yeah, happy 2025. I wanted to start the year in this channel sharing with you my top 25 books to read in 2025. As always, I didn't want to make this video a full list of either my recommendations or my TBR, so I decided to make a mix of both. And of the 25 books, there are 15 that are in my top books to read personally in my TBR or in my priority TBR for this year, and the other 10 are my recommendations to you. I included some of my favorite books from last year in the recommended books section from this video. Anyways, I'm gonna stop rambling and start with the list because we have quite a few books to talk about today. I'm gonna start with the TBR section of this video, and these are the books that are, you know, just either the books that have been in my physical TBR for the longest time and that I still have not read. But most of them, like I'm gonna be talking about 15 books in my TBR, most of them I don't own yet. Some of them because they aren't published yet. They are some of my most anticipated books for 2025, and some others because I simply have not bought them yet. So yeah, I'm gonna start with the ones that I actually own. The first one is A Dark Shade of Magic. This is the first book in the trilogy, but I actually would love to read the 3 books in the series. This is by B. Schwab, and at this point I think B. Schwab is one of my favorite authors of all time. I just connect with her books and her writing so much, even though like most of them are so different from each other. I think it's about parallel Londons. I don't know if it's in different times or just simply different dimensions. I usually go into books without knowing much about them. Just, I don't know, I follow the vibes, I guess. Another one by B. Schwab that I'm so excited to read this 2025 is one that hasn't been published yet. I think it's out on June, and it's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. It just sounds like exactly what I want to be reading in 2025. All I know is what she says about it. I think it has toxic lesbians and also vampires. Next book in my TBR, it's also by one of my favorite authors, and it's Leigh Bardugo, and this one is Ninth House. I'm obsessed with the vibes and the cover and everything about this book. I'm pretty sure this one is dark academia, and at least in the moment that it was published, I think it was her first or one of her first adult books, and that just tells me that it's gonna be quite different from her other books. Last year I read The Familiar, which I would say is also an adult book, and I actually enjoyed it so much, even though I feel like it's an unpopular opinion at this point because everybody seems to have not liked that one. Next one is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I actually started reading this book a couple of years ago, and for some reason, maybe I was just in the middle of a big reading slump, probably that was the case. I DNF'd this book at around 100 pages. I wouldn't say I DNF'd it because I wasn't liking it. I was just not connecting with any story. So I left it there, and I just want to pick it back up and start from the beginning, and maybe if I enjoyed the first book, actually finish the trilogy, because this is also a trilogy, which I'm starting to think this might be a problem because so far I think I've shared 4 books in my TBR, and 3 of them are the beginning of, you know, different series. Next one, well, the next 2 are actually quite popular books or series, and I have not yet read them, but this year I'm on a mission of reading more dystopian books because the book that I'm writing is a dystopian one. I think it's going to be really helpful to see how dystopian books, even though they sometimes are a bit cliche or they fall into the same patterns, how they can still, be unique in their own way and how they convey different messages in different ways. So yeah, I'm gonna be studying dystopian books this year. One of them is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and the other one, it's a really famous series that I'm sure you will all know. It's The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Yes, I know it's quite difficult to believe that someone at this point has not read The Hunger Games, or at least watched the movies. I have only watched the first movie. I watched it like, I don't know how many years ago, and I rewatched it just a couple of days ago. But that's the only movie that I've watched. I don't know how this story continues. I don't know anything about the second or third book, and obviously know nothing about the prequel. So I'm really excited because I actually really liked the first movie. And I'm also really interested to see how the movie differs from the book. And I'm curious to see if there's a bit more, world building in the first book. The rest of the books I don't currently own, so I'm just gonna be sharing them with you and leaving a picture in the screen. The first is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I read one of her books in 2020. I'm not gonna say which one because I'm actually gonna be talking about it in my recommendations section of the video. But I love that book so much. It's actually one of my favorite books of all time. So I thought it was about time that I read something else by her. And this one seems to be the one that has the highest ratings. So I'm gonna start with this one. The next one is The Will of the Many. I would say this is one of the most popular books, at least of the ones that I saw on BookTube from last year. And every person that I have seen talking about it has loved this book, so I'm at this point I'm just curious to see what's it all about. Next on the list is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches last year. It was one of my favorite books. I absolutely recommend you read that one if you want something just cozy and low stakes, but also a fun time and a story that's well written. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for that, something that's not gonna break my heart or make me suffer too much, and I think this next book by her is gonna be quite similar to The Very Secret Society, so really excited about that one. Next, another really popular series that I have never read and I'm so intrigued by it is An Amber in the Ashes. Again, I'm gonna be starting a new series. This is probably such a bad idea, but I don't know why most of the books that I'm interested in are first installments of series, so I don't know. Okay, so I see I cheated a bit and I put two books in, just pretending it was one because they are both by the same author. One is Book Lovers and the other one is Happy Place, and they are both by Emily Henry. Just when I was finishing 2024, I read or I listened to Funny Story and I loved it. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue reading other books by Emily Henry. I actually already started Book Lovers and so far I'm really liking it. And I'm also really curious to see which one is going to be my favorite because as I watch different booktube videos, every booktuber or every person has a different favorite. So I'm just curious to see which one is going to be my favorite. Blood Over Bright Haven. So excited about this one. And similarly to The Will of the Many, everybody that I have seen or heard talking about this book talks wonders about it, so I'm really curious. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I have never read any other book by Sally Rooney. They have never caught my attention, so maybe Intermezzo is gonna be the first one that I'm gonna be reading by her. Next, The God of the Woods, and also similar to this one, All the Colors of the Dark. I think these are two books that were really popular last year and also were either nominated or won some of the Goodreads Choice Awards. I was gonna make a video and maybe I still will. Let me know in the comments if you think I should still record and post that video or if maybe it's a little bit too late and you're no longer interested. It was gonna be, I read the 4 most popular books of 2024 to tell you if they are worth it or not. And some of the books that I've mentioned in this list were gonna be in that blog. So let me know if you still want it. I guess I could still make it. It just seems like everything from 2024 is already, old. So I was really doubting. Okay, we are done with the TBR section of the video. We're gonna move on to my 10 books, my top 10 books that I recommend to you guys to read in 2025. Some of them, as I said, were my favorite books from 2024, and some others, to be honest, I was just, scrolling down through my list of read books that I have from the past few years in Goodreads, and I thought it was so interesting because I remember really enjoying some of these books, and these are books that neither I or anyone is talking about anymore, just because they are, from so many years back, maybe 5, 6 or 10 years ago. And I think it's sad because it just makes you maybe miss some books that could potentially be your favorites. So I'm gonna start with one of the old ones, and this was actually my favorite book for such a long time. I don't know if it would still be my favorite one. I would probably have to reread it and see if I still, appreciate it as much as I used to. But in the moment that I did read it, similarly to what happened to me with 1984, a dystopian book that blew my mind and just made me so interested about the world, the society, how everything ended up becoming that way, and the characters and just everything. And usually they are pretty dark stories. So yeah, anyways, I'm rambling. Sight by Neil Schusterman. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but if not, please forgive me, because I have the book in Spanish and I actually read it in Spanish so many years ago. The society in this dystopian book is set in a future where humans don't actually die from natural causes. We have, mastered immortality. We can cure pretty much everything and bring people back to life, except if they are burnt. This obviously creates some problems with the amount of people that are in the world and the ever-growing population. So they create this figure, which, their main purpose is to kill people. They have a set number of people they have to kill every year. They can choose the way they kill them. The book starts when the two main characters of this book are becoming psychics and they have to, learn, and they both get a mentor that's gonna teach them how to be psychics and how to do their work. I'm gonna be rereading this book this year because I was thinking about it and I don't even know why. This was one of my favorite books for such a long time. I read the first one, I read the second one, and I never ever got to read the third one. So yeah, that should be fixed this year. I don't know if I was scared that I wouldn't like the third one, or maybe some time had passed and I didn't fully remember the whole thing, so I wanted to reread it and I never actually reread it. So this year we're changing that. As I said in my TBR, there was one book by an author that wrote a book that's one of my favorite books of all time, and I was gonna wait until this part of the video to talk about it, and here it is. It's Station 11. I don't know what it was about this book. I think it was mainly the way it was written. It had such a unique and special style and voice, and just the way everything was shared and told and unfolded. It was magical to me. I would say this is also a dystopian book, but it's quite different, and it's narrated in different points in time. Some of the chapters are in the future, some of the chapters are in the moment that the world was sort of ending or completely changing. And then there was some chapters from before the pandemic. Actually, funny story, I read this book in 2020, and the beginning of this dystopia is with a pandemic. Obviously, a way bigger one than the one we experienced in 2020. People actually just literally died, and almost all of the population in the world died in this pandemic. So yeah, quite different, but also was pretty scary when I was reading this one. And maybe it was also one of the reasons why I connected so much with this story and it became one of my favorite books. Next one is a book that's also one of my favorite books and it took me completely by surprise. It's City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I have not read anything else by her. I started reading Big Magic so many years ago and I think, I don't know, I maybe DNF'd it or I stopped reading it at some point. This one is quite different and as I said, it took me by surprise because it's not a type of book that I usually go for or that I usually enjoy. It's one of those just vibes, no plot book, or maybe heavily focused on character growth, development, and the story of the characters, but not necessarily an intense plot where you just can't wait to see where everything is going. The book is written in a letter format. Vivian, which is our main character, writes this letter to Angela and she's basically explaining her what she was to her father and her whole life story. It starts in 1940 when she moves to New York to live with her aunt and she starts working there and discovering herself and her life, and she works there for a couple of years. In New York she discovers a kind of life that she has never lived before but that she has been longing to live for such a long time. It fits so well with her and all of the characters that appear in this book are so fascinating and so, unique in their own way. But also, it was so interesting to see how many stupid mistakes Vivian makes during these first years of her life, living on her own, in a new city, and how much I related to her and to all of her experiences. Because even though they weren't the same as mine, they were, the same caliber of, I don't know if that's the word, but they were as bad. My mistakes in my early 20s or when I was 19 actually were, in the level of Vivian's mistakes. So I don't know, it just made me feel so understood and see myself from another perspective and see how a full life can still unfold after, such big mistakes. So really love this one and would really recommend, especially if you like character-based books. But even if you don't, maybe you're like me and usually you prefer plot-focused books, maybe you would still like this one. The next two books are by the same author, but I wanted to include them both in this video because they are both some of my favorite books of all time and they meant so much to me in different moments for different reasons. These are quite popular, so you might have already read them or maybe at least heard about them. If you have heard about them and you have not read them yet, this is your sign to do so. The one that I've heard the most about is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Our main character is Nora and the book literally starts with her trying to take her own life, and while she's doing it or while she's lost conscience, she goes to this library, the Midnight Library, which is full of books that contain different possible lives that she could have lived if she made different decisions. And she has a chance to try on as many different lives as she wants and see how everything ends up in each of them. And if maybe instead of dying, she prefers to just change her life by one of the ones in these books. I just read a sentence here in the back of the book that I think summarizes this book and the idea of the book so well. It says, which raises the ultimate question: with infinite choices, what is the best way to live? I absolutely love this one. It was one of my favorite books from a couple of years ago, which made me read the next book by Matt Haig. I have not heard that many people talk about this one, but I'm torn. I don't know which one is my favorite between the two. This one is The Humans, and it's about this alien. This alien starts a story taking the body of a professor. I think it's a Cambridge professor. This man has a wife and a family and a dog, and he loses his life when this alien takes over his body. I think it's because the professor makes some sort of discovery about the world or the universe that, you know, shouldn't be shared yet. So this alien comes in and is trying to manage the situation and takes over this professor's life. He goes to his place and starts pretending to be him. He starts meeting and getting to know his wife, and I think they have a daughter or a son. I don't think it's more than one. They also have a dog, which is very interesting, the perspective or the relationship between this alien and the dog. But the most beautiful thing about this book, the most special thing, and the thing that I love the most about the humans is actually the exploration of humanity and of being human, and the mistakes we make and the things we learn, and just, you know, the struggles of being a human being. So highly recommend this one. I have one more book left before I share with you my favorites of 2024, and this one is one of those books that I was just browsing my favorite books of the last years, of the last decade, and I saw this one and I thought, oh my gosh, I love this book. It meant so much to me in that moment. It was many years ago, so it's definitely more of a young adult choice, but still love the story. It's Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. I don't even remember what it was about. I just remember falling in love with the characters. It's such a character-based book, but I just didn't mind. I connected so much with the characters and their story and their lives. Moving on to my 4 favorite books of 2024, because I think this video is already so long. I have 3 of them in physical format and 1 of them I read it in audiobook format. So I'm gonna share that one first, which I actually already talked about before, and it's Funny Story by Emily Henry. I had not read a romance book in so many years, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years or at least 8 years. This was my first romance book in such a long time, but also my first Emily Henry book. I just wanted to know what was, you know, all the hype about, and I loved the book. I loved Emily Henry as a storyteller. I think she does a wonderful job of unfolding the story and the characters and making it so real and so funny at the same time. That was, you know, a 5-star for me. I love the characters. I felt so identified with the main character, and I loved the love story. So yeah, I don't know how any other Emily Henry book is gonna top that, but the next one is more like a honorable mention. As I said, I read so few books in 2024, so, you know, there weren't that many 5-star reads, but a close one was A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. The thing that I loved the most was Ava Reid's writing style and her capacity to create this dark atmosphere. Our main character is Effie, and she loves books. She actually wanted to study literature in university, but in this world, women are just not allowed. So she ends up studying architecture, and she gets chosen to design the new, you know, like, I don't know if it's a house or a project for her favorite author, which is a man that passed away. And he wrote many years back this book that has been with Effie for, you know, her whole life. It's the one thing that has made her feel more understood and less alone. She has some mental health issues, and by the way, this book is full of trigger warnings. It's quite dark, so yeah, just check that out before you go on and read this book. But she has some mental health problems that have led her to feeling isolated and different from the rest of the world. So she gets chosen and she goes to the place where this man lived, and she starts working on the design. The house is just, the vibes are vibing. Everything is so dark, so wet, so tetric. I know the word in Spanish, but I don't know the word in English, so if I didn't say it correctly, I'm gonna leave it here. Anyways, when she gets to the house, she meets this guy that's also a student. In this case, he is a student of literature, and yeah, he is there also working on some things about this author. This was one of the only books I've ever read that talks about another book, like a story that talks about a story. that I've actually cared about. I usually don't care about the stories within stories. The next two were definitely 5 stars for me, and I don't know which one to choose for my favorite book of 2024. I'm gonna start with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by B. Schwab. I know I'm late to the game. I only read these in November of 2024. It blew me away. I love this book so much. The way it was written, the way, Addie's life unfolded through, 300 years, and how much I cared about her and about her life and everything that she went through, not only in the past, but also the things that she's going through in the present. So if you don't know about this book, which I highly doubt, it's about Addie LaRue, which is a girl that was about to be forced to marry, and she really doesn't want that. All she wants to do is travel the world and be free, even though, the book starts in the 1700s or something like that. Yeah, 1714. So when she's desperate, the night before her wedding, she starts praying, and she continues praying while it's getting dark. So she basically begins to pray to the gods of the dark, or the devil, and the devil appears and she makes a deal with him. And basically she is allowed to live for as long as she wants, but she will not be remembered by anyone. She cannot say her name, she cannot be photographed or, appear in anything that would keep her presence through history, and she cannot have any relationship with anyone other than the devil. So quite an interesting premise and story, but I loved it. If you have read it, please let me know if you loved it as much, because it was a 5-star for me. And finally, the last book in this video, and I would say my favorite book of 2024, is The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This goes along with the second installment of this book. I read both of them in 2024 back to back because I love this one and I had to know how everything continued and unfolded. Again, another dystopian book. This one was quite different from all the other ones I read because it's not quite, not quite in the future. It's more like in the moment that a dystopia is unfolded. And again, interestingly enough, I read this book in 2024 and it starts in 2024. So another case where I read a dystopian book that starts with something similar to the moment that I'm reading it. So yeah, this book starts in 2024 and it's the moment where society is just collapsing and crashing. Climate change is, really bad and everything has gone so wrong. People can barely leave their house without the risk of being killed, brutally killed by other people, not by the government, not by any, entity, just by other people, because the rules and order has been completely rocked. It's written in the form of a diary that Lauren, our main character, keeps from her life and everything that starts to happen to her, but also it's about this new religion that she is creating, or more like unfolding and discovering as she starts the book and grows a little bit older, and more things are happening in her life and everything around her just gets worse and worse and worse. Again, a very dark book full of trigger warnings, so please check that out. But I think it's such an amazing and well-written dystopian book, and it's one of those that will make you think and will make you really analyze how everything is going in the world and in society and how wrong it could turn. Like, this felt so realistic and so possible, and it just had me with a bit of anxiety all the time, just hoping that this, that the real world will not end up looking like what it does in this book. And believe me, it was written, many years ago, but still, like, it feels like she was spot on. Like, so many things she actually predicted. Yeah, it was written in 1993. And so many of the things she's talking about have either happened or are happening or are quite similar in our real world. So it's like she predicted what would happen. As I said, I also read the second book, which is the Parable of the Talents, and it was also 5-star. I would say I probably like that one better than the first one, and I loved the first one. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm really tired. I've been talking for, yeah, wow, an hour. So I don't know what I'm saying anymore, and I hope you're still here with me and still understanding what I'm saying. But if you are, leave me a tea emoji in the comments, and that way I will know that you're still here. And also, please let me know what was your favorite book of 2024. I always love to read your comments, so please leave them down below, and so we can continue talking in the comments. I hope you have a fantastic day, a fantastic week, and I will see you very soon in my next video.